Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Mike Beer for Kentucky Derby Prep Recap. In this edition, we'll take a look back at the Grade 1 run-happy Santa Anita Derby going a mile and an eighth at the great race place, Santa Anita. Let's keep our eye on the 5 Practical Move, the 8 Mandarin Hero, the 7 Skinner as they break from the gate. Practical Move is a horse that's very tactical, and he gets another trip close to the pace, and I think that was key in the Santa Anita Derby.
Yeah, it certainly was. This is the position he's going to wind up taking up here as this field heads to the first turn is basically the same trip he got when he won the Los Al Futurity last year, the same trip he got when he won his 3-year-old debut in the San Felipe, and he gets it again here, Dan. This is his calling card since they've stretched him out. He has good tactical speed. He's going to sit right in behind. He's very comfortable doing so. He's under a big hold, and he's going to move up the challenge around the second turn.
This is great position for not only Practical Move, but the horse to his outside, National Treasure. They're sitting off 2 giant long shots who are going a fair pace, and they're going to get the jump on the closers turning into the stretch. One of them is Mandarin Hero, the Japanese-based runner who's following Practical Move, and I think that was a good decision.
I thought it was a good decision too. He is going to wind up, as Practical Move makes his run up the rail here around the second turn, it is going to, leave this horse sort of in behind him and then having to try to work his way clear as this field comes to the top of the stretch. And you'll see when they do come to the top of the stretch, he is going to work his way through between horses, Dan, but he's going to have Skinner right to his outside. This horse is actually in pretty tight in the upper stretch.
We turn into the stretch and Practical Move with another rail skimming trip has taken over the lead. Skinner, as he did in his prior start, looms boldly on the outside. Mandarin Hero gets to split horses, and this is a really exciting finish. But did you ever really get the feeling until very, very late that Practical Move was in danger? Mandarin Hero is now unfurling a long stride. Practical Move always looked like he was going to have it, though.
He did deny him. It also kind of looked like, Dan, it's hard to tell, but it almost kind of looked like maybe one more jump and Mandarin Hero gets there. I don't know. I'm willing to give Practical Move the credit he deserves there because it did feel like he really dug in gamely to hold on. But I think at least this has to maybe call into question a little bit the distance for Practical Move and how well he's going to wind up handling it. This was his first start at a mile and an eighth, and it got really, really close at the wire.
He will go into the Kentucky Derby, however, as one of the fastest horses in his crop. He earned a 100 Beyer speed figure. His second consecutive triple-digit Beyer, the 100 in the Santa Anita Derby, is going to put him on the top of a lot of folks' lists heading to Kentucky. He is a horse that has worked out perfect trip after perfect trip after perfect trip, and you can't guarantee that sort of trip, even with his tactical speed, in a full field of horses, all of them careening down the stretch at Churchill Downs, looking for position going into the first turn.
That's a very good point, Dan. I mean, I really appreciate the running style this horse has, though. He just basically does it all on his own in the early parts of these races. And leading up to this race, I know that the prior 2 wins were both a mile and a 16th. But just watching those 2 wins, I really did not feel like more distance was going to be a problem for this horse. To me, it felt like he really wanted more distance. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe that's the takeaway from the Santa Anita Derby. I'm not so sure, though. I thought he ran really well again. And if I ultimately decide that when it comes Kentucky Derby that I'm not interested in this horse, or I'm not going to bet this horse, I don't think it's going to be because of the distance.
The top 4 horses, in my opinion, all deserve a slot in the Derby. As of right now, Mandarin Hero, Skinner, and National Treasure are on the bubble. National Treasure, last year's runner-up in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, missed some time this year with a little bit of an issue, was coming into this race off the layoff. He's now 34th on the Derby qualifying points list. He'll need a lot of help. He's had a pretty good trip outside of Practical Move. Maybe he needed this race, though, and it is a perfect prep for wherever is next.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, listen, he's 1 to 5 or one for 5 now in his career. So we'll see if he winds up getting in to the Derby. All in all, Dan, I feel like he ran pretty well in this race. He was in a good position for most of the running, but he is a horse who wound up once Mandarin Hero and Skinner made their moves at the top of the stretch. This horse not only wound up between those 2, but with one of those stopping pace setters right in front of him. I feel like that caused him to lose a little bit of position. And then You go back and watch the final 3/16 or so of this race. Once he gets out into the clear, he runs on and he does not lose any ground to the 1, 2, 3 finishers in this race. I thought it was kind of a deceptively good performance. I just don't know if he's going to make it into the Derby field.
Skinner is truly on the bubble. He's 21st as of right now. He would need one defection to get into the race. He has ability. I don't think the distance is going to be an issue. He seems very green to me. He runs in spots in some of his races. He has a pretty nice acceleration. We've seen it in his last few races where he makes a big move from the back of the pack into contention. And then I don't know whether he hangs or he's on his wrong lead or he doesn't still really know exactly what he's doing. He just can't finish it off. There's something here with this horse. I think he's going to be okay. I wonder if the Derby's too much too soon.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see if they can get in, if they wind up going there. I'm not, I won't really disagree with anything that you said about him, Dan. Maybe he just needs a little bit more experience. I think the talent is certainly there. And I think, listen, whether you feel like he had some kind of big excuse in this race or not, I think it's at least really, really important to just point out again, practical move, Mandarin Hero got rail runs in this race into the stretch. Skinner was 3 or 4 wide all the way around the track. He was still there at the end. He ran really, really well in this race.
Mandarin Hero came into this race with something to prove. He was less was not as highly regarded as Derma Sotogake, who won the UA Derby in Dubai and is coming to the Kentucky Derby. He had faced sort of lesser competition in Japan. He showed a lot of professionalism and a lot of guts in this race. The trip did work out, but he had no problem taking dirt in behind. He was on hold, he waited, he got to the outside, and he kicked on late. He is 24th on the Derby qualifying points list, but he seems like a likable horse.
Yeah, he certainly does. I mean, we'll see, how much more he can improve. I thought all in all, it's hard to really take away any negatives from this performance anyway, Dan. Certainly the distance felt like it was no problem for him. He was finishing as strong as anyone else in this race. Yeah, I thought all in all, the trip was a pretty good one. But again, he was, sort of in tight between there. He had to try to rally in between Practical Move and Skinner at the end of this race, and he was still surging to the wire. I mean, this horse ran really well also. I don't know if he's going to get into the Derby or not, but I don't think you would just totally dismiss him if he does go there.
Let's take a closer look at the winner, Practical Move, who was even money and converted. It's funny that Tim Yakteen got a lot of the Bob Baffert train runners. Of course, Baffert is ineligible to compete in the Kentucky Derby, so his horses had to go elsewhere. Many went to Yakteen. Practical Move's always been a Tim Yakteen production, and he's really done little wrong in his career. Ramon Vasquez rides this horse very well.
Yeah, he seems like, again, he's the kind of horse that just seems like he puts himself into a really good position early and then still kicks on through the stretch. I like everything about him, Dan. I like all of his races since they've stretched him out in distance. I really appreciate the kind of trips that he can pull in his races. And I know that this race, maybe it felt like the mile and an eighth didn't help him that much. I find it hard to get too concerned about distance with him just based on his overall form.
Let's take a look at the prices for the Santa Anita Derby. $4 even for Practical Move, who will go to Churchill Downs as one of the fastest horses in this year's Kentucky Derby and will likely be considered the best from the West.